Hey guys, hope everyone out there is doing well. I'm going to do a quick video to let all of you know that I have a pretty cool announcement, and that is that my wife and son are now dual citizens. They acquired, or my wife reacquired her Philippine citizenship, and my son acquired it through that process this past Saturday. So I'll talk a little bit about it. I'm not going to get into every detail about what you need to do that. I will put a link in the description of this video if you want to learn a little more about it. But I'll answer a few questions first. Why did we bother doing this? Why did I bother to get dual citizenship for my wife and son? And there's kind of a short-term answer and a long-term answer to that. The short-term answer is there was really no pressing need to do that because we're not right now planning to visit the Philippines, and even if we were, we could have done the balikbayan visa with no problem. So there wasn't really a pressing need to do that right now. But the main reason we did it is I learned that the Houston consulate was coming here to do an outreach in El Paso. So it's like, while they are here, I want to do this. Now, one thing I'll go ahead and say at this point is one of the biggest factors that will make this very convenient or very inconvenient for you to do has to do with where you live. So if you live in like San Francisco or Los Angeles, then it's just a matter of making the appointment and driving there to the actual consulate that's there, or Houston, and doing it there. Now, I don't know anything about the parking or the traffic or anything like that, but in other words, if you're in the same city, no big deal. If you live far away from one of the consulates, then you're faced with the dilemma of, okay, do I drive to that city or visit that city just to get this done? Or while I'm at that city, try to get it done? Or do I wait and see if a consulate visits me or near me? And I did have a kind of a hard time figuring out if a consulate would ever come near us. But then just suddenly I noticed on Facebook, one of the Filipino groups here in El Paso posted that the consulate was coming. So I saw that and I'm like, let's do this while they're in town, because otherwise we may spend hours traveling to get this done. And while they were here in El Paso, the venue where they had this thing was the YMCA, and it was like under 15 minutes away from us. So I said, let's do this. So that's the short-term answer. We did this because we could, and the consulate was visiting here in our city, which I appreciate. The long-term reason why we're doing this has to do a lot with my son. So for example, let's just say that, or let me back up a little bit. When we moved here to the States, I wanted my wife to become a U.S. citizen so that she could have the same passport that I have. And we could all go anywhere we decided to go, we could go together. So for example, let's just say someday, 10 years from now, I want to be a pastor in Singapore, just an example. Well, since we both have American passports, and now my son, of course, no problem, we all go together. Well, apply that same general principle to my son. Let's just say that, God forbid, something happens to my wife. I'm guessing that would make it a lot more difficult for my son to apply, or it could. Or let's just say, God forbid, something happens to my wife and me. I would want my son to have that dual citizenship so that someday, if he wanted to move to the Philippines or just spend time there and explore that part of his heritage, fine, he can do it. So that's kind of the long term. It's always something I've been interested in doing for my wife and son. And it just happened that we had the opportunity to do it fairly conveniently. So I'll talk a little bit about the process. I'm not going to go into every little detail. We did get a couple of curveballs. The first one is, okay, I sent everything. I scanned all the documents and sent them to the consulate through email, to the Houston consulate. And like I said, there's a link below, everything you need. It's the typical stuff you would expect, copies of birth certificates, that kind of thing. So The idea is you scan these copies, but when you go to the actual event, you bring the original so they can verify the original. Well, I did leave one thing out, and they emailed back and said, we need this. I scanned it, or I sent it to them. I had scanned it. I had just not included it in the email. Fine, no problem. I did get an email on Wednesday morning saying, okay, you're good to go. There's a swearing in today via a virtual swearing in today at, I believe it was 2 o'clock Houston time, which is 1 o'clock our time. So that kind of threw me off because we're talking under 24 hours notice. And my wife was actually, on Wednesday, she was a chaperone for my son's field trip to the zoo with the school. So, but we made that work. My wife was able to reach a point where she told by that time, that 1 o'clock our time, it was kind of over the trip, and so, or almost over. And my wife was able to tell the teachers, look, I have to take this, I have to handle this, and it was no big deal. So that was kind of the first curveball. No big deal, no big deal. The second small curveball that we were throwing, and again, I'm trying not to be, I don't want to be negative about this because we're very grateful we could get this done. When we got there Saturday morning, okay, we had sent all our documents in, and I had also booked a reservation time to be there. We booked a reservation for 11 a.m. and even printed out a ticket. I was told, okay, you show your ticket when you go in. Well, when we got there a little before 11 on Saturday, the best we can tell, it was just first come, first serve. So there was already a line waiting to see the officials, and so if I had it all to do over again, I would have probably just tried to get a ticket for early that morning and just shown up as soon as they open. So anyway, no problem. We got in line. Because we were at the YMCA, my son, I was just able to walk around the pool with him in different places and kind of keep him entertained. They did tell us later he didn't really have to come. But again, when I'm dealing with any type of government agency, I try to be over prepared. So he was there if they had needed to see him. Again, I probably could have just dropped my wife off and we come back later when she's done, but that's okay, no problem. So she got in line, and we went into this thing with the idea of we want to get their dual citizenships. If we can do more, if we can apply for passports, that's great. That's bonus. That's gravy. But if not, we want to get the dual citizenship. So that's another reason I wasn't too worried about the line, because I'm just thinking, okay, they're here in town. We can get this done. We will never have to do this particular step again. So finally, by that afternoon, we were in line. They took a lunch break from 12 to 1. Sometime not long after they set up again at 1 o'clock, my wife saw them. So long story short, my wife was able to get her dual citizenship and my son's dual citizenship. My wife was also able to go ahead and apply for her Philippine passport. And there's really not a pressing need for us to do that. The main reason I thought about doing that is if we go to the Philippines at some point, she can bring that passport with her instead of having to bring the dual citizenship documents with her. So passport, of course, is designed to be carried around more easily. Some of the other stuff, like doing business in the Philippines, buying property, we're not really interested in that right now. But again, we're there. They're here in town. Let's do everything we can with them. The other little curveball that was thrown is we were going to try to apply for my son's Philippine passport if possible, and they told us that what we're going to have to do now is register his birth in the Philippines. Now, by the way, let me add one more quick thing here quickly. The children, when a child is establishing dual citizenship, or when you're establishing dual citizenship for a child, there are two ways to do that. If she happens to have been a Filipino citizen at the time of the child's birth, that is considered, then the child is considered automatically a Filipino citizen by birth. Now, in our case, what had happened. Let me find the form here so I can, yeah, okay, let me find the form. In our case, our son was, we applied for his Filipino citizenship by, let me see if I can find what it's called here. I can't see what it's called, but anyway, it's basically, it's reacquisition, retention, something like that. It's called something different. But basically, because my wife was born in the Philippines, because we can prove she was born in the Philippines, my son was eligible for dual citizenship. So the one thing I would add here quickly is if you are here with your wife in the United States and your child was born here, you had a child here while she was still a citizen of the Philippines, look up how to report that birth to the government of the Philippines. Now, again, what they told us is we also have to do that for my son, even though he at birth was not a Filipino citizen. I don't really completely understand that whole thing, but it is what it is. If that's what we need to do, we are going to try to do that, and that can be done by mail. That step, you gather your documents, you send them to the consulate that's responsible for your state, and that can be done by mail. So anyway, I hope all what I have shared with you makes sense. We are thankful to get the dual citizenship established. We are thankful that my wife will have a Philippine passport here. It's going to take, I think they said June. It's going to take a little while for it to get here. That's okay too. And we are going to work on setting ourselves up for someday maybe getting my son a Philippine passport. Maybe. We're just not that, again, it's nothing urgent, but something that we'll look into doing. So anyway, like I said, my primary bit of advice to you is try to figure out which consulate is responsible for your state. So you'll know which consulate you need to deal with. Try to see if there are any Filipino groups, associations near where you live, because some of them may be trying to host an outreach from the consulate. And like I said, if your child was born here in the United States, but your wife was still a citizen of the Philippines, go ahead and report that birth back to the Philippine government through the consulate. So hope all of this is clear. I don't want to make this video too long, but anyway, that's something we were able to do, and very happy that we got it done.